The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of Worldwide Digital Broadcasting Corporation.
Well, here we are again. Welcome to Meet the Candidate. And today we have a special candidate for a special race for a special state. And I'd like to welcome Steve Schiffman to the show. Steve,
how you doing, John?
I'm doing well, sir. Thank you for coming in and trying to tell us why we should vote for you.
I'm the best candidate.
Okay.
I'll be blunt.
Are you going to tell us why?
I will.
We have a little time so we can get into that, okay?
Right?
And let's tell everybody, what are you running for? What office are you here to talk about?
I'm trying to win the Democratic nomination for U.S. Congress, Congressional District 3. Now, it's very large. It goes from the northern part of Summerlin all the way down to the Arizona-California border by Laughlin, near Needles, Bullhead City. So it covers a lot.
It is, and I was looking on the map the other day, and I am just outside your district. I am one of those zip codes that is not included in your district.
Then you're in 3? I'm rather in 4 or 1?
Yep. I'm just off of Ann and Jones, and it's 89130. And it's like 89128, 89129, 89134.
Will that stop you from voting for me?
Yes.
You sure?
Yeah, because I think it's against the law.
I tried.
And I think that there are other parties that have had a problem with that in the past.
You know, you bring it up because one of the competitors, Susie Lee, comes from District 4.
I'll be darned.
She does. And there's no law against it unless you run for state office, which you have to live in the district, whether it's the assembly
Right.
and so forth. But for Congress, you could be what we call a carpetbagger and go from one district, or what in law we'd say forum shopping.
Right.
Which I believe is not the best way of doing it, but let the voters decide.
That, and that's the way we're supposed to be doing it, is letting the voters decide. However, the whole point of this program is, I believe, voters can't decide unless they're educated and they know who the heck they're voting for and what they're voting for. And so that's why we're doing what we're doing and try to get all the candidates in here, regardless of their political affiliations or political beliefs, and tell the voters why they should vote for you. Now, excuse me for just a minute. I went through your website, and pretty much everything you want to know about Steve Schiffman is on that website.
Thank you.
And what you believe, and so I'm not going to waste a lot of time talking about issues that are already there, that people can easily go and find.
Fair enough.
But there are a few things that I do want to clarify, and some issues that, according to a number of studies, are important to Southern Nevadans.
Nuances.
Yes, nuances.
That's
Good
right.
word. So I'm going to write that down. Nuance. You got that? Okay. All right. This is one of my pet peeves.
Okay.
You are running as a Democrat.
I am a Democrat.
Okay. And you are running as one.
Yes.
Okay. So
Whatever that means.
what that means is that what I'm trying to find out is there are issues and there are parties.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes down to voting for whatever laws or whatever is on the books, how do you feel you should be voting? Along party lines? Along what your constituents want? Or about what you feel in your heart?
Ideally, all 3. However, that's not reality. What is it?
Which is why I asked the question.
That's right. Because when you look at it, I'm serious. You could be a statesman.
Right?
You vote for what is right, not
Right.
what people want.
That's correct.
You represent the people in the field, your constituency, but they're sometimes wrong.
Yes.
And sometimes you have to be a leader to take the lead in deciding what is best. And if they disagree with you, they'll vote you out of office.
Right.
So it depends on the situation.
Okay,
But you have to be honest and have integrity and respect. As a matter of fact, he even asked me this, but I'll tell you, I call myself a classic liberal. Now, what does that mean to everybody? Tolerance, all right, that makes
Yes.
sense. Fairness, you gotta be fair, and have compassion. If you don't have compassion, fairness, and tolerance, you're in the wrong business. I mean it.
No, and that's true. So where does the majority rule come into it? Because you said that there are times when you may have to vote against what your constituency wants.
It's interesting, and when I worked in Afghanistan for USAID and the military as a lawyer,
Right.
I had a sign which the 1- and 2-star generals even liked, and they used it. Flexibility, yes. Contortionist, no.
Okay.
So if you take that to what you're asking, principles count, and you'll be flexible, consensus building, reaching out, homogenizing, digesting, but don't vote against your core principles or values. That's the difference. If you can live with yourself,
Yes.
that matters.
I agree with that. So if you are, and believe me, I truly believe that the average voter is not as educated as we should be. How do we overcome that?
By choice, or they're educated because
When
don't
I
know.
say uneducated, I mean in the sense that they really don't understand. I'll give you a perfect example.
Okay.
Everybody, this is a real hot issue right now, and that is the Second Amendment, gun control.
gun safety, not
gun
control.
safety.
Gun safety.
But most of the people that are spouting the Second Amendment rights have no clue what the Second Amendment says and what it means. And they interpret that to mean, okay, the Second Amendment says I can have guns, all the guns I want, and nobody can stop me.
They're wrong.
Which is my point.
Okay.
But that's what they believe because that's what they've been conditioned, that's what they've been told, and that's what they have been sold by marketing people.
Maybe because we're baby boomers, we're different. When we were young, we were told to think, to reach out, to learn the facts.
Yes.
Be educated, be informed. I think that's what needs today.
Yes.
And so when you
But
ask
see,
me-
I don't need to because I've got my cell phone. So anything I want to know, I can just go to my cell phone and go to Facebook, and they'll tell me what I'm supposed
you
to
have
think.
thumbitis.
Yeah.
Thumbitis.
They'll tell me what I'm supposed to think and how I should vote.
I believe in the old-fashioned way. I use a library and paper. Believe me, what can I tell you?
But I'm saying that's
That's right.
just an example of what I'm talking about.
Now, if we
So-
talk about the Second Amendment, excuse me, you have to remember that as a lawyer, the Supreme Court interprets the law.
That's correct.
And-
And supposedly, by law, they are the only ones who are tasked with the job of interpreting the Constitution.
Technically, the Constitution will provide, they never used it, a clause that says that Congress can grant or pass certain laws
Right.
that are outside the jurisdiction, non-appealable to the Supreme Court. If you're doing that, you're undermining our total checks and balances.
Of course.
Some of our competitors have actually gone on record saying they would want something like that. I wouldn't. That's why people will argue to have a constitutional convention. Well, if you do that, you're opening everything up and you can lose your rights. And only the vocal minority might win. So sometimes you have to be a little more conservative in what you're doing. But you have to ask yourself, what does the Second Amendment mean? Traditionally, historically, it meant the militia, that a citizen soldier, and so forth. And the Supreme Court said,
Because we did not at that time have a standing army.
that's right. And so the Supreme Court eventually, last 8 years, 10 years, said that's not a requirement, that you can have it without being in the militia. But ask yourself, why do you, viewers, want a firearm? Do you want it for defending the home?
Right.
Do you want it for sporting goods, such as shooting birds and things of that sort? Tell me, do you need a semi-automatic rifle to protect your home?
No, I would actually prefer a flamethrower.
You're full of hot air anyway, right?
That's correct. But when I was in the military and we had an opportunity to fire every weapon that the Marine Corps had, every
That's right.
handheld weapon. And to me, flamethrower was the coolest thing I ever saw.
But you know what the key part? My dad was in the 1st Marine Division in
Right.
World War II, and he was a marksman, had certain awards for that.
Right.
Before the Marines gave you a rifle or a sidearm, you had to be going through an education.
We
you
spent
had to
weeks.
be knowledge.
We spent
Or even
weeks
months.
training
Exactly.
before you even got to fire the weapon or even put ammunition in it.
And you should know how it works. You should
Yep.
be able to take it apart, clean
Yep.
it. You kept it, and hopefully you would never need to use it.
Correct.
It had one purpose, to kill somebody.
Yes, to kill someone,
That's
but
it.
as a deterrent. Because if you're asleep at 3 o'clock in the morning and somebody breaks into your house, and if you do believe in gun safety, like a lot of people say they do. You've got your gun locked up somewhere.
Many don't. They have it by their
Under
pillow.
their pillow.
And that's wrong.
Right, because they're going to shoot their son when the kid walks
That's
in the
right.
room because he had a nightmare.
And you know, the law should provide that the person who owns the gun, the firearm, should be legally responsible for any injuries that come because of that.
Yep.
And sometimes
Like
they're
your
not.
automobile.
Exactly. Strict liability, we call that in law. But it is a matter of common sense. I call myself the Democratic common sense candidate because no one's saying you can't have guns and weapons if you live in the rural areas.
And no
you want
one's
it.
trying to take your
No.
weapons away. You
No.
can have all the handguns you want.
But do you need a magazine that will take 15, 20, 30, or 50 bullets or cartridges? No. California has 10. Supreme Court said 10 is sufficient. Do you really need any more to protect yourself at home? I
No.
don't think so.
No, I don't believe so.
And if you're going to go sports hunting or target shooting, you surely don't need to have a high-speed, high-capacity rifle or something of that sort. It's not needed. The problem is people associate gun ownership with religion. And you know about the Scopes monkey trial?
Right.
You can't take any rights from me. You know, what's good for God is good for me.
That's
right?
correct.
And they believe that guns are next to holiness. I really think so.
But when Jesus walked the earth, there were no guns.
I'm Jewish, so I don't know about that, but I
Okay.
believe you.
All right. Well,
But
he
your
was,
point was
he
well
was a
taken.
guy that, yeah, no.
No, but you know what? You know what the difference is in Israel? For those who've never been there, they are a citizen army, which means that by the time you start at 18 until you're in your 50s, you are always in the reserves.
Yes.
All the time.
Yep.
And so you are given weapons, but you know how to use them, and you're responsible for them. Accountability. It's like, to me, having a car and trying to drive it without having a license.
Well, it's getting back to common sense.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Should you be able to sell me a weapon without some kind of background check? In other words, you bought a let's say you bought a shotgun
Right.
a couple of years ago, and you decide, I don't want it anymore. I'm going to sell it. And hey, I know John's my neighbor. I know he's wanting to buy a gun, so I'll just sell it to him.
That's the loophole.
Right.
It's not a gun show, but it's a private sale, no background.
That's
needed.
correct.
And that's
So I
dangerous.
could be nuts.
You could be.
Right.
And does that solve the problem?
If you cannot sell me a weapon without a background check?
No, being nuts, does that stop you from selling to your friend? Because you could have a mental disease and not be known about it.
That's correct.
Or you could have a weapon that says, my friend, underage, but no one knows, you give it to the father and so
Yeah.
forth. There needs to be accountability again. Now, there are people out there, and I disagree with them, who are so concerned that the FBI, the military, the police are going to have an attack one day on the door. They're going to come in and take your rights away.
Right.
That's not realistic. If you believe that way, don't live in the United States or go someplace like in Idaho in the mountains and be
Yeah.
a survivalist. Because I have faith in the United States of democracy. We've had it for over 200 years. And if you really think that we're going to be a victim of a coup d'etat, don't snort, please.
Yeah.
Don't take the weed.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we need to move along here.
Sure.
Let's talk about the economy, and I think-
Jobs.
and jobs.
And jobs.
Which is you can't talk about one without talking about the other.
Correct.
Okay. So we're doing pretty good now as far as the employment rate.
Yes and no.
We're doing better than we have in a long time.
Let me ask you this.
Please.
Years ago, you had high-paying jobs. Today, they're low-paying service jobs.
Well-
so a job is a job, but it doesn't mean you have the same income.
I've been in construction most of my life.
Okay.
Okay. So unless you're union, if you're non-union, framers, electricians, people like that are still making the same wage that they were 20 years ago.
Whose fault is that? Isn't that the contract negotiations?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because I want to put more money in my pocket. I don't want you to have it. I want to have it.
There's a difference between you want me to have it if I am in need, if I'm poor, if I'm suffering from medical needs. You don't want to contribute to my.
No, you should just work harder.
Means everybody has the ability to work hard.
That's right.
You
Yeah.
think so?
Sure. I mean, people.
Where's your compassion
People,
when you're
people on welfare should be working and not sitting at home. People on unemployment should be working and not sitting at home. I'm playing the devil's advocate here.
No, but you're right, because many people believe that. And you have to ask yourself, if you have an emotional problem, a mental problem, can you hold the job? Are you able to do what you can? There's a presumption that people are lazy and they don't want to work. For some, they will rip off the system. That's true.
Sure.
But for many, especially in Nevada, where the mental health facilities here are very poor, next to nil, people cannot get jobs if they're unable to work in a situation. Do you want somebody to be in a cashier or a store and suddenly have a psychosis attack because someone said the wrong thing or gave a wrong look? It's scary. And so sometimes you have to have compassion for people. You don't lock them up.
Right.
Because with medication and health care, they could be stable. But you can't take the attitude is that everybody can work and if they don't have a job. Well, let me ask you this, and this is serious about it. If, as a carpenter, if you were making $40 an hour or $50 an hour with benefits, and suddenly you're working at a fast food for $7 an hour, or for a while get public assistance and you get more than that, what would you do? Really? Are you going to work for $8 an hour and lose all your benefits?
Hell no.
Of course
I
not.
want to go back and make as much money as
That's
I
right.
can. And I've been in that situation over the years.
That's right.
And because the construction industry is cyclic,
Right.
and there are times when there are no jobs. So I can go out and try to train for something else, but what?
But I don't believe that if you're in construction, for example, you can use your same skills. People do it all the time, I'm sure, for other things. They're related, but they don't have to be the exact same thing. You could have the skills of being a plumber and still be a good technician to do something else, can't
Of
you?
course you can. And
It's a matter of flexibility.
That's my point.
That's right.
But if the opportunities are there.
Well,
In other words, okay, maybe I'm a great carpenter or a great electrician, but I really suck at math. So I'm not going to become an accountant.
no, you're not.
Okay.
But you need basic math skills to have a business,
Of course.
right? You don't want to sign a contract and get shortchanged.
That's right.
So education is important. You don't have to have a PhD, granted. On the other hand, education's never hurt anybody.
Well,
Even part-time, go to junior college.
there's 20 different roads I could go down right now.
Take any of them.
No, and that's what I'm trying to do. And one of the points that I want to make is I want to take a couple of steps back because you're an attorney.
I'm an attorney.
Are you a practicing attorney?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So,
Even with USAID internationally as well, advise parliaments,
Gotcha.
rule of law, trading. I negotiated against China when I worked for the Commerce Department.
As an attorney, and you have to make a decision, and this goes way back, and I'm
Sure.
sure you're familiar with it, okay? And I don't remember where the statement actually comes from. I'd rather let 10 guilty people go than put one innocent person to death.
Right, that's right.
And
That's
and
right.
and we get
The analogy is the death penalty. They use that.
Right,
normally.
the death
I'd
penalty.
rather have 10 guilty people free than execute one innocent person.
one innocent person.
That's right.
But it's a philosophy that people see. Well, you're just weak. That's stupid. You know. So what if one person? Well, what if that one person?
Sounds
is
like
you?
George Wallace in the 1960s.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
You got it. Thank you. So where do you? How do we draw the line? How do we make that? And this goes back to the people who we think could be. They're on welfare, they're on assistance or something like that.
Right.
And this is one of the other roads I wanted to go down. We are so upset about that this guy might be making $150 a week and not doing anything. And he's milking the system. And yet we have these huge corporations that are paying no taxes whatsoever. Billions of dollars every year compared to, we're going after this poor guy that's getting $150 a week.
Hypocrisy is all around.
Yes,
okay?
it is.
I'll give you an example. Listen to the local talk shows here in Las Vegas out there. I'm
Not
sure
this
you do
one.
it. No, but there's some
Yeah, no,
radio
no.
talk shows.
Yes.
And of course, there'll be more ultra-conservative, law and order, things of that sort, against the government, right?
Right.
But yet, listen to the ads. I saved myself money. I owe the government $50,000 in tax, and guess what? I'm not paying a penny of it. I got away with it.
Right.
That's hypocrisy, my
I
friend.
love the one a couple of years ago. It was about an attorney, and I was in a motorcycle accident, and it was my fault. But my attorney got me $3 million.
That's right. Or,
So, and that's what we're conditioned to be. It's like how can we scam the system?
that's but let me give you another example. I'm going to alienate possibly not truck drivers, but those who have the half-ton, quarter-ton pickup trucks. all
Right.
They're typically, if you want to profile them, to be more conservative, Republican, waving the flag, law and order type, right? Go down Summerlin Expressway and see how fast they're going. Speed limit is 55, you go 60, and you're left in the dust. How come these same people who want law and order are the ones that will speed at 80, 90 miles an hour? They're the ones that will ignore the stop signs and do everything to get away with it.
Yep.
But yet they'll complain when other people try to obey the law.
Well,
Why?
and that's funny you should bring that up, because
That's hypocrisy.
just a few days ago, I was stopped at a gas station getting gas, and there was a pickup truck, two American flags sticking out of the back, waving out there, and I think, okay, cool,
Right.
Guy takes off out of the gas station, hauling ass down the street, burning rubber, blah, 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 blah. And so I'm on my way home. I get about 2 blocks down the street, and here he is, pulled over to the side of the road by a cop.
Right.
And I think, okay, well, hey, there's your law enforcement, and he's going to bitch about that because, well, why aren't you out, catching real criminals? How come you're bugging me?
You're just as bad.
You broke the law.
But it's interesting because, and I don't like the stereotype, but I've worked overseas for many years in Afghanistan with the military, embedded with the military and the like, and Africa, West Africa, where they had Sierra Leone, Rwanda, where people actually were injured and killed. But I'll tell you, the people, some people anyway, who live here, who wave the flag, they claim they're patriotic, they're talkers. The ones I respect are the ones I met working in Afghanistan, the ones who face bullets every day, those unfortunate people who got injured, the wounded warriors. Those are the people who I respect. And you know what? They're the ones that are not complaining. They're being hurt, veteran rights and so forth. But that's the type that you see on the street here that you're describing. They like to say, I'm pro-military. I want to protect the vets. Where are they? They're not overseas, are they?
Yeah.
They're staying at home.
Yeah.
So what can you do with it? It's called hypocrisy. Look, we're all hypocritical at times.
Of course, and we're all looking out for our own best interests.
That's right. And that's why
to a certain degree.
That's where the law makes a difference, in hypocrisy anyway, between, let's say, tax avoidance and tax evasion. Tax avoidance is to avoid paying money. It's legal.
Right.
Tax evasion, you go to jail.
Of course.
And for good or bad, and that was the point that Donald Trump was saying when people asked, how can you go into bankruptcy, how are you losing this money? He used the system.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with using the system as long as you're doing it in a legal way. Loopholes were there for a reason. And if you don't use them, that's your own ignorance.
Right.
All right. I'm not saying it's good policy, but on the other hand, and especially if you're in business, you have a fiduciary responsibility to be able to care for the money and responsibilities like that. And if you don't take the write-offs, if you don't take the loopholes, you are defrauding or hurting your own investors. So there's a fine line. Balance is the key.
Right.
There's no extreme left or extreme right that works. It's always middle of the road balance. You compromise. You're able to say, you know what, I disagree with you on this part. You disagree with me on my part. But let's get together and we'll build something together that works. That's what you need.
Well, and at least, and that goes back to what I was started off this conversation with, party over politics,
Right.
Or party over people, or party over country. I can't talk to you because you are in a different party. I can't have anything to do with you. We can't come to any kind of an agreement because you're a Democrat, he's a Republican, so we can't be doing anything.
Well, that's why I'm running.
Yeah.
That's wrong. I come from the school of thought that consensus building is important.
Yes, it
you
is.
reach out, not because you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and you're wrong. It's because we have a mutual interest to improve, to get a better way of life, to progress to the next level. Now, people say progressive candidates are left-wing, and they have names for them. But remember General Electric. Progress is our most important
important
product. That's right.
Right.
And so progress per se, there's nothing wrong with it because you don't want to get stuck. Now, however, it's playing with words, but conservative or not. If you want to go back to regulation, for example, in media, fairness doctrine and the like, you want to go back. Isn't that being a conservative, going back to something that you had before? Or are you a liberal because you want regulations that were eliminated? So you're playing games with words.
Right.
So when people use these words, it's a game. You have to look at the issues, the substance of what a person stands for.
It's a shell game.
That's
so
right.
that you can't really tell what the issue is.
Let me tell you something. There was a company in New York that eventually went out of business. The owner died. And he sold things, clothing on discount. His motto was, an educated consumer is our best customer.
Yeah.
If you are educated people, you are the best voter. It may be a right, but you want to have informed decision. You don't want to be told what to do. But it's interesting because people were talking about Facebook and misinformation and things of that sort, or fake news. I've yet to meet a person, have you, that will admit that I was fooled, that I listened to somebody else. I don't know anybody. The people I know thought for themselves. Do you know anybody who was misled and will admit it?
I can think of 2 instances where I fit that bill, but I don't admit it.
Oh, okay. I want to know those who admit. Yeah. I haven't found it.
Right, and I'm not talking in a political sense.
We're talking about as a human being.
Right. Listen,
nobody wants to admit
people have bullshitted
flaws.
me my entire life, and sometimes I fall for it and sometimes I don't. And it just depends on how emotionally involved I am in whatever the situation is.
But what did Ronald Reagan tell you about that? Trust, but what? Verify, verify, verify.
Right.
If you do that, again, you're informed, you won't be a fool.
Yeah, well, he wouldn't be letting the political part or in the Republican Party now, but
They would say that Barry Goldwater would be a flaming liberal in today's time.
yeah, I know.
You know what? And
I lived through that.
And
so.
JFK. Now,
Yeah.
to me, JFK was the ideal politician. He was a statesman, he was bright, and he was motivated. But today's standards, he would not be. He would be considered he would be what they'd call like a Reno, Republican in name
Yeah.
only, or something of that sort. It's interesting, you didn't ask, but I'll volunteer. The 2 presidents that I really look at as leading this country in the past, all right? One was a Democrat, JFK. The other was a Republican. Now, you know which Republican I'm talking about? Not Ronald Reagan.
No.
Teddy Roosevelt.
I was just going to say
Teddy
Roosevelt.
right?
Yeah.
It shows that Teddy Roosevelt cared about antitrust, about the environment. But can you imagine him being a Republican and saying that today?
No, he would not be in the Republican Party.
Can you imagine when Barry Goldwater was protecting the environment in the Southwest or protecting public lands? He'd be denounced today, wouldn't he?
Yeah,
As
of
one of
course.
these left-wing liberals.
Well,
Liberalism
let
is
me
not
ask
wrong.
you this. Okay, this is not a trick question. I really want to know the answer. Why are you a part of the Democratic Party as opposed to an independent or a Republican or any other party?
Because I'm truly an independent Democrat. Now, the answer to the question very bluntly, and I experienced this when I lived in Florida for many years. I said to myself, in Florida, a Democrat in Florida was like a liberal Republican in New York. A Republican in Florida was so extremely right-wing that it was the equivalent of what we'd call the left-wing Bernie Sanders of the Democratic Party. Now, in many states, including Nevada, if you are not a member or registered, let's say, or affiliated with a political party, you cannot get active or be listed on the primary elections. People will not vote with certainty of third-party candidates. Now, I'll give you an example of lesson learned. And the Republicans actually are the conservatives. And I don't always say Republicans equal conservatives,
Right.
because that's not true. But to take the 3rd District in 2016, Jackie Rosen won at 47% of the vote. She's a moderate. She's not a liberal by the Bernie Sanders type, but she's a moderate Democrat. 53% of District 3 voted against her, but she won. Why? Instead of voting for one Republican, they had 3 candidates divided it, okay? So they hurt themselves. But going back, and I have no problem in this, when I was younger, when I started in college, as a matter of fact, I was active in politics of Henry Scoop Jackson from Washington. He was a moderate liberal by many standards back then, but he didn't win the nomination. You may recall, and I remember this clearly, the front runner at that time, besides Jackson, was Edmund Muskie.
Right.
Remember that? Edmund Muskie was virtually a shoo-in for winning the nomination until one day he reacted to an article that was written about his wife, and he got emotional, and he had tears and so forth defending his wife. From that day on, his candidate went down. He was a wimp.
Yeah.
All right? Now, who did they have in place of Muskie? George McGovern. Besides his anti-war stance, he was what we would call the Bernie Sanders of the 1970s, all right?
Right.
He won one state, Massachusetts. Nixon won 49. What does it tell you? The same thing with Ronald Reagan, 2 elections. Remember, Ronald Reagan, just like Trump, just like Clinton, won by getting cross votes, all right?
Right.
Republicans alone can't elect a national office in this country. They don't have enough people. I'm proud to say, I was a founding member of the New York Democrats for Ronald Reagan. Remember, Ronald Reagan was a union leader. He was head of the Screen Actors Guild in California. Before that, he was also a supporter of FDR and the New Deal, because he looked at the situation at any given time. He didn't look at party labels, all right? And people regard Ronald Reagan with respect. He was a person that didn't play games. You knew where he stood, right? You may disagree with him on certain policies, but he didn't play games, all right? When you think of Donald Trump, and District 3 was won by Donald Trump, 53% voted against Jackie Rosen, but they divide themselves. My question I want to ask people is, the people who voted for Trump in District 3, how will the Democrat candidates, aside from myself, respect these 53% and what their needs and wishes are? Because some candidates will say, if you're Republican, I will disagree with them, I won't do anything with them, I won't work together. That means that you are catering to a minority and at the same time ignoring the majority. You respect the majority and the minority, but you represent the district, everybody.
That was part of my point.
That's right.
Is that you can't just say, okay, if I get elected, I'm only going to listen to the Democrats in my district.
That's right.
You have to listen to everyone, because everyone has, well, most everyone has a legitimate concern about what's going on in their district, and that's why they come to you.
You know what the problem is? Many people will talk to them, speak to them, but they don't listen.
Right.
There's a difference between hearing and listening and to understand. You have to reach out and find out what's motivating you and why, and what can you contribute.
Okay, let's move right along.
All right.
And I love talking to you, and we don't have a whole lot of time, so I don't want to get too far into this.
Go as deep as you want. I can climb out.
All right, so I want to talk about health care. What are your views on that, as far as where we're at? What should we be doing, and how should we be doing it?
It's a mess. It's a mess. There are many levels, many tiers we can deal with, rather than everything together in the kitchen sink. I'm on Medicare. I presume you're on Medicare too. It's required.
Well, actually, VA. I get all my medical care from the VA.
But I thought TRICARE only is a supplemental, that you have to go on Medicare, and then what's not left, TRICARE
as a
takes
combat
over.
Veteran with a certain percentage of disability.
Oh, okay, 40%, 30%. Okay.
Yeah, I qualify for 100% medical care from the VA. I mean, I
and
do
you earned
have,
it. You earned it because you got injured.
Right.
That's the key.
I do have Medicare.
Right.
Only because I have to.
Right.
That's the
what I'm
law.
saying.
You got to sign up
That's
for
right.
it when you
That's
reach
right.
a certain age.
But my point is this, and for some military, it's not a problem. Portability. The rules now let you, I believe, that you can go to a non-VA hospital, show identification, get treatment.
I have on a couple of occasions, because they could not. It's going to be too long before we can get to see you,
Right.
and so you have a choice of going to these other 3 places.
But that's not the general rule for most veterans.
In some places, yes, and I'm not saying. I do have to say that the veterans care here in Southern Nevada is phenomenal. I get better care here than I ever did with any private insurance.
What does that tell you? It shows that
we
you're
can do
motivated. Right. My point is, if you are a veteran, you deserve what you received. In other words, you're not getting.
Wait.
But let me finish.
Don't you, as a human being?
Look, you are not getting free medical care. You earned it, my friend.
Yes.
When you were in the military, you gave certain sacrifices. This is part of the rewards we're giving you, all right? So it's not an entitlement saying, I deserve this because I'm a veteran. No, it's because you put your life at risk helping the Americans, okay?
That's correct.
And so
because when you do enlist, you are taking that chance.
That's right.
You know, hey, this could be the job that kills me.
But if you look at Medicare like myself, and I had a high or medium lottery number, I'm aging myself,
Right.
235. So I was 1A for a year. I took a chance. If they didn't take me, I was out, okay? But the point is, if you're on Medicare, Medicare is partially federal on traditional Medicare,
Right.
and a lot of it's state. HMOs. Did you realize that if you're an HMO and you have an illness and you're traveling to California, Illinois, New York, you're not covered, except for an emergency?
Exactly.
Why is that? It's ridiculous. People are saying, let's have Medicare for all, let's have more socialized medicine, things of that sort. If we want to try something on an incremental basis, here's what I suggest. Pharmaceuticals, all right? Why not have, under Medicare, free pharmaceuticals? If you have an HMO, it's included, the Advantage plan.
Right.
If you're on a traditional Medicare, it's not.
Right.
Why is that? Why can't we have Medicare that's reflected for health care around the country?
Well,
Rather
because
than have
that's
states
going
control
to
it.
that's going to diminish the profits of pharmaceutical companies.
But it's more than that, because the law allows them not to compete. You know,
Right.
But who passed that? Did the pharmaceutical companies do that? Did they do the legislation? No, they didn't.
Technically, they did. They paid for it.
Who did they pay?
They paid our elected officials. But that's my point.
Why did you elect them then? Why
I-
didn't you
I
get them?
didn't.
Okay. Well, somebody did,
Yeah,
right?
somebody did.
Somebody did.
Because
So,
and it's just like everything else.
Sure.
You get sold a bill of goods. and-
exactly. So what I'm suggesting is, if you want to try things, work with Medicare, even it out. Let's see how that works. Where you have a national Medicare
Well,
benefits.
it's okay. Our system doesn't work. Let's throw it out and start all
No,
over again.
no.
Why not fix what doesn't work?
That's what they're trying to do, except
Yeah, and I saw that worked out real well
Let me tell you
because
what-
now
yeah.
the new health care that the Congress is pushing is going to eliminate an additional 8.9 million people and increase the budget by 33 billion.
it's not reform. Why do you think it's reform? It is a tactic to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And if you look at it from that perspective, then you're not shocked.
No, I'm
by
not
it.
talking about the Affordable Care Act. I'm
Okay.
talking about the new Health Care Act that they're calling Trump Care
Right.
that is being pushed in Congress right now.
Those who advocate any reform want to get rid of the old totally,
course.
all right?
Of course.
This-
And the new is going to be more expensive and covering less people than the existing.
By the way, it's not cheap now.
No, I know it's not.
If I'm just using it as an example, if you're on Medicare, between the minimums and so forth, you're paying about $5,000 per year before you get full benefits.
Right.
So you have a wife and yourself, that premium is $10,000. It's not affordable, my friend. It's
No, I know.
not. And that's why I go back.
Especially if you're on Social Security and collecting, $800,
That's right.
$900 a month.
That's right. Now, in some ways it's fair, but some ways it's not. My brother-in-law is a retired lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. And at his age, he went, he wasn't on disability, but he went away from TRICARE to Medicare. But because his pension is so high, that instead of paying, let's say, $105 per month for Medicare, he's paying $500 for Medicare.
Yeah.
Now that's, multiply 500 times 12, that's $7,500 a year.
Yep.
So it's not cheap.
So what do we do?
Well, for example, we should allow competition in pharmaceuticals,
Okay.
including importation.
Okay,
All right.
just
But
pharmaceuticals
that's
or...
not just, you have to do one step at a time, and I'll tell you why. You can look at things like Trulicity or other medication that will say made in Germany, made in Croatia. You know the cost of living in those countries, the product does not cost that much.
That's right.
But here, you'll spend Trulicity $200 for one dosage when it might cost them $15 in other places. It's a ripoff.
Of course it is.
And you have to ask yourself, who is benefiting from it? There's no question that pharmaceuticals are big business. They're to make money. What I think
Half
needs
of
to be
the ads
done-
that you see on television are for pharmaceuticals.
That's right, but you know what they're doing, and I don't agree with it. Freedom of speech is one thing. They're not selling it to the doctors. They're selling
No,
it
they're
to
selling
you,
it to the patients
so you
be-
can pressure the
That's
doctors to
right.
get it. Right?
Doc, I saw this on TV. You got to give this to me.
Okay.
Okay.
Exactly.
And if you give it to me in enough quantities, you're going to get a free trip to Spain next year.
And you know what happens? It's more than that. They have all these dinners
Right.
and gifts and so forth. That's why the big issue of the opioids, in which the company said, we're not going to try to promote that anymore. It's big business. It's big business. It's distribution, making the money. I'm not saying you have to do it
And
at
they're
a net
creating
cost.
customers.
involuntary addiction. Call
Yes,
it what you want.
of course.
All right.
All right,
Now-
well then that brings up...
But to be honest,
go
though,
ahead.
would you rather have medical treatment in the United States or go to some place in the middle of Africa?
Well, I'd rather not go to the middle of Africa because
Okay.
that's a
Latin
long
America?
flight. Now,
Latin America?
Yeah, probably not.
Okay. Where would you go instead of the United States if you had your choice for medical treatment?
Either the UK
Not cost,
or
but
France.
quality. For
Yeah,
quality.
the UK or France.
Why the UK?
Only because I know people there.
And did you know they have national health insurance as
Yes,
well
they
as
do.
private? But the difference is, typically you don't even have a choice of a doctor. You're just one of many numbers. They'll say, okay, you have a sore arm. It's not life-threatening. In 3 months, we'll see you. You have a dental problem. Oh, in 2 months, we'll look at your filling.
Okay, but
if-
if you have a life-threatening or a
Yes.
serious illness or injury, you're taken care of right now, whether you can afford it or not.
Do you know
Whether
anybody-
you have insurance or not.
Tell me, do you know anybody who got turned down in a life-threatening situation at any hospital here? Let's be honest about it.
Personally,
Yeah. They're not allowed to. That's the whole point. Emergency
that's
must
correct.
take
The
you whether-
emergency, they
right.
must take
They
you.
must take you.
Right.
All
But
right.
after that, you're on your own. They have
Sure.
saved your life. Okay, now you have medication that you've got to take. You've got to do this. You've got to see another doctor, but you don't have the money to do that.
In the
Now the hospital has
Right.
fulfilled their obligation.
Right.
They saved your life.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, the rest is up to you, buddy.
Let's look at who has insurance of one sort or another. Military, covered. Organized labor, covered. If you're on Medicaid now, where age is not an issue, covered. Medicare, covered. Who really isn't covered? It's the midsection, if you will, those
Right.
who are
The
working.
middle class.
Right. And the way our system worked, good or bad, is that the employer would pay for that as a fringe benefit. That is the problem because it's so expensive. I mean, I know, and you know, how the costs of medical care and prescriptions have gone through the roof.
Listen, I've sat on those committees or
Right.
boards deciding how much and what kind of insurance the employees are going to get.
Right. But
And
where
what
do you
we
weigh the
can
balance?
afford.
So where's the balance? And I understand this. Why do you think, in part, there's very little psychiatric treatment in this state, in Las Vegas? There are psychiatrists, but they won't work in the areas that they need because they say there's not enough money.
Right.
It's greed. Now,
And addiction is the same way.
That's right. And
if
if you
you're
know-
an addict and you've got the money, you can get help.
and Medicaid, for the most part, does not cover that.
That's correct.
And that's one of the reforms that are needed. We want to balance the
And
playing
while
field.
we're talking about this, and you
Yes.
mentioned opioids,
Yes.
so that naturally leads me to cannabis. And what are your thoughts on the cannabis industry, recreational, medical?
I don't use marijuana, never did. I'm not like...
I did in the 60s,
Look,
a lot.
okay, you do that. I mean, I'm not like others that said, I inhaled it 5 miles in international water.
Yeah.
All right? Because I don't see any value added to pollute your body.
Right.
All right? But it was around when I was in college and so forth. But to me, there's a difference between medicinal purposes
Right.
and recreational
Of
drugs.
course.
All right? I would have voted, in fact, I voted against recreational drugs because it's a big business. You know, some of the advertising that we heard for it said, well, it would let the police go after the hardened criminals and not go under these soft infractions. However, and I'm slightly exaggerating, but I'm sure you get the point. You take a place like Las Vegas where you have virtual free alcohol all the time, no restrictions, free gun access, and high on weed. Can you imagine somebody having all those three conditions and having a weapon? Wouldn't that get you nervous?
And I understand what you're saying and what the message that you're trying to convey there. However, my experience has been with people who are cannabis smokers on a
They're
recreational level.
calm, they're home, and they're not
They're
threats.
home watching TV, eating Cheetos or something, you know? They're not out driving in their car
How
when
come?
they're three sheets to the wind.
But now with recreational, it's different, isn't it?
No, because you can't smoke it in public. You can't drive while under the influence.
Legally. Tell me.
Well, you can't legally drive under the influence
That's
of
right.
alcohol
That
either.
doesn't stop you, right?
That's exactly right.
Right. So
So
you want to make it easier, is what I'm saying. Now, it's just a matter of whether you say if it doesn't hurt somebody, it's all right to do it. Again, the strategy for marijuana was always get it for medical purposes first, and then we'll go to a higher level to make it free. Remember, and this is true, marijuana was never historically illegal. It was only at the turn of the 20th century that it became illegal.
William Randolph Hearst.
And you had international agreements. But there's a difference, and this is something that is important to consider, all right? It's still against the law, federally speaking.
Yes, it is.
And you carry marijuana at the airport, you can go to jail.
Of course.
If you buy it legally here and take it to another state without having the identification, you can go to jail. So there are restrictions, but you know, the analogy, maybe it's like guns. It's not those who use marijuana legally, it's those who will use it illegally. Why another tool for crime, for people who can endanger yourself? Look, if you can tell me a legitimate reason why you get high, besides high on life, as we used to say, tell me about it, all right? If you need an artificial stimulant to get high, that's your problem, I think.
And I agree with that 100%. However,
and that many states
we
agree with
still allow alcohol. It's perfectly legal. You can go get a drink anywhere almost, especially in this town. And like you say, it's free in the casinos. You go in there and you play.
Go to Texas. You won't find it that way. There are certain dry counties.
Right. But
Dallas, you can get it. Fort Worth,
on a federal level, it's legal.
With certain conditions. Try to order alcohol across state lines.
Yeah, I understand.
Or try to buy non-taxable liquor and bring it across to another place that charges a heavy tax. They'll arrest you for smuggling. They really are. So the reason for alcohol is historically with the change of the amendments and so forth, but the states want as a compromise certain control. But the issue is...
And the states are wanting to do that now.
And they want money. Let's face it again.
Of course.
The issue with marijuana is not freedom. It's not the sense of what's good for you. It's strictly money and business. And you know, the irony is they will promote the sale of marijuana to make money. They prohibit lottery of state lotteries here because they don't want the competition.
Of course.
All right. So Nevada is full of inconsistencies. I don't call it libertarian. I think it's contrarian. And that's
good. I like that. Yeah.
But you know, what can you do about it? You know, it goes back to your original question of who do you represent. I have my own personal views, but my views are unimportant when I'm in Congress. It's what others think and what others want. I will advocate, and in my heart, as Barry Goldwater used to say, I may be right. But if I believe everybody else is right and I'm wrong, you swallow or bite the bullet and you do it. As long as you don't violate your own personal values. If you do what some people did under the Nixon administration, you resign.
Yeah.
And you say, I'm not going to do this. Remember that for Watergate? To their credit, they said, I'm not going to do it, and they resigned. You stood up for what you believed in. Nothing wrong with that either.
Okay, well, we're going to have to wrap this up here, so I'm going to give you 5 minutes to look into the camera and tell people why you. I mean, I know you said you're a better candidate, but you got some time here now to convince people why they should vote for you.
Well, I'm not sure why they should vote for me. I would rather say, why are you voting for somebody else? Really?
That's a good point.
My point here is, and everybody feels comfortable in their heart, but when you have 3 people who are Bernie Sanders clones, if you will, their motives may be pure at heart, but they're not going to accomplish anything. They could say, I'm going to get $18 an hour minimum wage, or $20 minimum wage, or Medicare for all, but Congress works as a consensus-building body, all right? It can't be 100% you. You have to compromise. You have to bend with the wind. That's why Jimmy Carter was asked, who would he vote for if he was Republican during the primary? He said Donald Trump, because Cruz and the others were ideologues, they wouldn't bend, and they were dangerous. As a matter of fact, as a side note, before anybody complains about impeaching Donald Trump, think about this.
Who are you going to get stuck with?
Right, because I remember Spiro Agnew. All right, do you know how close we were of Spiro Agnew becoming president of the United States because people wanted to get rid of Richard Nixon, which they did. But by the luck of timing, we did not have President Spiro Agnew, heaven forbid. Now, Pence...
Because we got rid of him first.
Yeah, right. Now, Pence is probably more conservative, more right-wing than Trump will ever be.
Oh, absolutely.
But you know what the difference is? Pence is respected by his peers. They don't think he's a loony bin. And you know what? He'll be successful if he was in office to get things done that Trump could not. We'd be in worse shape.
Yeah.
So be careful what you wish because it could come true. So, going back to what you were asking me, why should they vote for me or others? I offer experience. It's easy if you're a multimillionaire to write a check or to donate. When I was in college and afterwards, I worked with migrant farm workers against the Florida Farm Bureau, very ultra-conservative. When JFK said, you should do what's good for the country, not for yourself, I went to the Peace Corps. How many people actually did that? Or I served with USAID in places such as Rwanda, Sierra Leone, or Afghanistan, where I saw misery. I tried to make a contribution. People here would say, we want their rights, and they would do this. I actually did it. I worked in Washington. I actually drafted laws regarding the right to vote, to protect your rights from rule of law, to stop the dictators, to allow Social Security in some countries. What people say they want to do, I've done it. Now you can either vote for wannabes, hope-to-bes, or you vote for experience. And I'll tell you one thing. You can't have 30, 40 years of experience and be 35 years old. It can't be done.
I've noticed that.
That's right. And so I'm asking people, and really let's think about it. And Bernie Sanders is correct. Susie Lee has reported over $750,000 in contributions. Some of that is her own money.
Right.
Quid pro quo, my friend. Why is she getting that much money unless she promised something to those people?
Well, and
an ear, perhaps?
that goes back to my
a
point
wink of
about
an eye?
parties.
Look, I'm not saying that you don't want donations, and I need them because we've tried to get our message across in media, but proportionality, like in law, you do what's reasonable. You don't do overkill. And you know what will happen? If she uses her money to swamp the airwaves with her message, she may lose because she's trying to buy her way in.
Of course.
Right? And so people are smart enough. And most importantly, and I visited places always south, and let's be honest, District 3 is a relatively conservative, moderate district, but the people who live in Laughlin are different from those people who live in Boulder City. They're different from people who live in Summerlin and the like. You have to be able to adjust, to take in, and find what's for the common good. You have to have decency. You have to fight for a better tomorrow and not look at yesterday and saying, what if, why didn't we do this? You have to take yesterday's experience and improve and build upon it. Don't throw it away. Don't denounce people because it was a past. What I want to do is leverage and to add to improve. That's different from many people saying, I want to disregard everything and start from scratch. All right?
I like that.
I don't know if that helps or not, but that's my motivation.
Cool.
And I hope people will do it. And my website, by the way, I'm offering, and I'll mention to you, I didn't tell you before, I have a special section, probably the first one to do it, called What's Your Gripe? I want people to send to me, and the address is on, and maybe you'll get it, it's also on my website, a 60-second or 90-second video clip. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, whatever. What is your complaint with Congress? What are they doing wrong, and what needs to be corrected? People, for much, hear complaints, but we don't have anything concrete. Focus on 1 minute complaints, the elevator speech of what's wrong with Congress, and you'll be able to hear your complaint and see if others agree with you or not. That's democracy in action. That's what I'm offering on my website.
Sounds good.
I appreciate it.
Steve, I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
I thank you for taking your time to help me get these messages out. And I'm going to say to you what I always say to you, get out there and vote. Register and vote. I don't care who you vote for. Well, I do, but that's your business. I want you to get out there. I want you to vote. We had 47% of the eligible voters in the last presidential election did not vote.
And did you know for the primary and the
47%.
We only had 15% of the Democrats
In the
vote in the
primaries,
primary.
right.
That's disgusting.
And that's your fault.
It's everybody's fault. Apathy is the culprit.
Okay. All right. That's all the time we have because we don't have any more time. So I'd like to thank you for watching this, and watch for more Meet the Candidates coming up soon. I have a whole list of people that I guess the word's getting out now that we're doing this, so that should help us all.
And by the way, I'm open to debate. I'll meet anybody. Left wing, right wing. I believe my issues are valid.
Okay.
So if they want to invite me to go
Hear
against
that?
them, I'm willing to do it.
You want to get in an argument with this guy? Cool.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Hey, thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time on Meet the Candidates.